so pleased to have Dr. Joanne Moore at the table to talk about a rather serious topic, the loss of a spouse. It happened to you when you were 57 years old, young, married for 37 years. How do you take that on?
Well, your initial reaction is you just feel like the rug's been pulled out from under you, or your life is a jigsaw puzzle with pieces missing, and at first it's pretty hard to navigate.
A child, of course, is a terrible loss. A spouse is a terrible loss.
Absolutely.
Somewhere along the way, you decided, I'm going to write. You author a book called After the Loss of a Spouse, What's Next? And it is a primer about how to go forward. Where did you find the words?
Exactly. It didn't start with words. It started with something inside, an energy. One day I just noticed that there was a spring in my step. And I said, uh-oh, what do I do with this? I had gotten so accustomed to shuffling with my head down that the real me was starting to come back.
How long a period was this after you lost your husband?
Probably about a year.
Okay.
And then I had this energy, and I realized that I still had a lot of love in me and a lot of energy in me, but I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. So I did sit down to write to try to organize my thoughts.
Why was it important to put it in a book? And were you feeling guilty about feeling okay? Or did you give yourself permission to feel okay after a year?
There is some guilt about it. There's no question about that. But I knew that that wouldn't do me any good, and that Joe wouldn't have wanted me to feel that way. It wasn't my fault that he died, certainly. And you do get some recurring thoughts, and I think it was my social worker that had me start writing, because she said those recurrent thoughts are your brain's trying to remember something. And so if you write them down, you don't have to remember them anymore, and your brain can kind of rest.
And you can go back to it and remember.
Right.
What was important for you to say to the population of widows and widowers?
I wanted to give them permission to be happy, and I wanted to encourage them to find meaning in their life. I believe to my core that every stage of life has meaning and dignity. Whether you're a child, that's an important stage of life. Whether you're a teenager, that's an important stage of life. But you can't stay there when the clock has moved on. You don't want to stay adolescent forever. You need to move into adulthood, and it's no different with this.
You say that marriage is Act 1. This is Act 2. What do you mean by that?
Well, Act 1 sets the stage, develops the characters, sets some conflicts, and then the curtain goes down and there's darkness, and the light flickers a little bit, and you go back in wondering what the next act is going to be. How will the characters continue to develop? What will the solutions be? Will it be a happy ending? How will the characters interact? You have all these things, and all these possibilities are open to you.
What are people saying to you about this book? Is it, thank heaven somebody wrote this, we should connect together? Because this was a life well lived. You were married 37 years. Of course, you would like it to go on forever.
Oh, yeah.
It stopped at 37. There's life after that.
I may be widowed longer than I was married. People are saying, gee, I wish I had had this book back 27 years ago when it happened to me, that I had covered every area of life, from hobbies to faith to travel. How can you do all of that well afterwards? What are your choices?
Shortly after that comes a magazine called Pathfinder, where you write more stories about going on alone. Tell me about how the magazine came into play.
The magazine was an easy start.
It's not that easy to start a magazine.
Well, first of all, I love magazines. I'm one of those old-fashioned people who still loves print media.
The slicks, as they were called.
Yes, and it's just great. It's like a friend came to visit. You get a magazine in the mail and you pour your cup of tea and you sit down and you read. And you know, when you're a teenager, you read 17 magazine, cover to cover. And when you're widowed, male or female, you can read this cover to cover. It tells stories about how other people have managed. Some people have done some great stuff, and other people have gambled away everything they had. So I tell stories about people who I think are doing it well, and I tell stories about people we might learn from. And then there's cooking for one. There's how to parent if you've lost a spouse when you're younger. There's someone from history. We covered Milton Hershey and Norman Rockwell and Grandma Moses. These people did great stuff after they were widowed.
She was in her 70s when she started painting.
Exactly.
So there's life. Pathfinder, why did you call it Pathfinder? Why is it called that?
Well, that was an inspiration for my daughter-in-law because we each have our own path and there's lots of ways to get where we want to go. And even off of a path, there are side tracks, and there's paths, and there's scenic overviews, and there's places to rest, and there's places to climb. There's just something for everyone on a path.
How much of a challenge is it to put this magazine out?
Well, I work full-time as a physical therapist in East Lyme, and I'll get up at 4:30 every morning to work on this, and before I go to work in the morning. So this hasn't turned a profit, so I'm keeping my day job. But
it's important information.
It's such a passion for me.
Why?
I don't want everyone else to have to go through what I went through. I don't want them to all have to reinvent the wheel. There are certain decisions that you have to make, and they're so much easier to make when the questions are laid out for you in an organized fashion. It's kind of like choose your own adventure. Do you like this? Try that. Do you like this? Try that. And you can keep branching off.
What was the hardest thing after your spouse died that you needed help with, that you didn't know how to do? Can be anything.
Oh, computers probably. He was so smart in computers. He was just my better half, to tell you the truth. He had a tremendous energy and a joy of life, and he was really smart. He'd know anything you could ask him.
Did you find strength in yourself you didn't know you had?
Absolutely.
Tell me about it.
Well, I've always been pretty strong because I had 3 brothers and couldn't show weakness ever. But Joe empowered me in a lot of ways. He believed in me, trusted me, encouraged me, and I can keep hearing his voice as I'm not sure about how to get somewhere, or I'm lying under the computer with the wires going and I know he can do it, and I had to change the flush valve on my toilet, and I
Listen to you.
watched the
Wow.
YouTube video and I went to the hardware store. You know, $5, it was fixed.
Are you helping others find the light after trauma, after a life well lived and a long marriage?
People say I'm an inspiration, but I don't know. They'd have to speak about that for me, I guess. People love the magazine, they love the book, and they tell me that it helps a lot.
Magazine is online,
It is digital, pathfindermag.com.
but you and I have both discussed that we feel like it's still important to have something come in the mailbox.
Right.
When someone's alone and you have this stack of things where, gee, I get to read this and there's
Yes.
something to do.
Yes.
So how are we going to keep it on paper?
Well, to keep it on paper, you can go on to pathfindermag.com and give me your information, and when I get 1,000 people, I can print it again.
And I hope that you do get that. One more thing. What is the one simple thing that you think you've learned from this experience of being alone and going forward?
I think I've learned not to be afraid to take a risk, that failure's not fatal, and it's okay to try something, and if you don't like it or if it doesn't work out, it's okay, let it go, try something new.
Dr. Joanne Moore, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
coming
Ann.
on.
My pleasure, thank you.
Made a trivial pursuits when one this in. Who's this girl I spend all night kissing? And if was right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked to find myself wishing to find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Need to keep locked in the grocery store of a mind. Just to save time, skip right ahead to the last ride. The harder we look, the less we can see. Don't you know, you know, you know that you need me.